Most people think of a thief as someone who breaks into homes, snatches purses, or sticks a gun in someone's face and yells for the register. They think theft is loud, quick, reckless. They're wrong. Real theft, the kind that doesn't show up on the news until it's already over, the kind that takes down billion-dollar companies and rewrites contracts behind closed doors, is slow, surgical, quiet. You don't run in. You walk in. You don't wear a mask. You wear a name badge. And you smile. I spent 3 years inside a company. Not because I wanted a job. Not because I believed in their mission. I was there for one reason: to steal the only thing they truly cared about. Not cash. Not hardware. An idea. The year was 2018. The company, Lyrones Technologies, a clean energy startup headquartered in Austin, Texas. They were working on a proprietary energy algorithm, a breakthrough in lithium-ion battery optimization. What they claimed to do, if it actually worked, would shake the global energy sector. Production costs would drop by half, if not more. Battery efficiency would skyrocket. Applications would range from military drones to electric vehicles to infrastructure-level storage. That kind of tech? It wasn't worth millions. It was worth hundreds of millions, possibly billions. They called it Project Ampera. I called it a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I started by crafting a false identity. Not just a resume or a fake name, that's amateur stuff. I needed a life. So I built it piece by piece. A clean digital footprint as Nathan Kessler, a systems engineer with a quiet but upward trending career. LinkedIn profile, university records, employment history with shell companies I controlled. I even gave him a gym membership, Amazon purchase history, Spotify playlists. The kind of things background checks wouldn't even ask for, but would notice if they were missing. I used one of my holding firms to refer me into Lyrones. They were hiring like crazy, scaling fast, and like most startups, they cared more about passion and potential than due diligence. Within 4 weeks of applying, I was hired as a mid-level IT infrastructure analyst. I wore khakis. I brought my lunch. I kept my head down. And I started watching. The first 6 months were reconnaissance. I didn't care about the job itself. I just needed to understand the ecosystem. Who had access to what? Who was indispensable? Who talked too much? Who drank too much? Which doors were badge only? Which servers ran hot at 3 a.m.? Who worked weekends when no one else did? Most importantly, who touched Project Ampera? It was smaller than I expected. Only 8 people had access to the test servers. 2 of them were founders. 1 was a legal liaison. The other 5 were engineers, 3 men, 2 women. One of them was Priya Jain, a senior dev with a reputation for being the closer. Smart, loyal, sleep-deprived. She was the kind of person who lived for the code. Ate instant noodles at her desk. Used sticky notes to track the phases of her mental breakdown. She also had remote access privileges. That was my in. But I couldn't go at her directly. That's how you get caught. Instead, I became useful. I accidentally fixed a DNS error she'd been struggling with. I left her cold brew coffee on the server rack after a bad sprint week. I sent her memes, nothing creepy, just enough to make her laugh. I didn't flirt. I didn't push. I became a comfort zone. 3 months later, she sent me a Slack message at 2:14 a.m. Hey, server's acting up and I'm crashing. Can I shoot you my access creds and you poke it? It took me 11 minutes to fix the problem. It took me 3 minutes to silently clone her entire access container. I had a mirror of Ampera's development environment. But I still wasn't done. Anyone else would have grabbed the files and bolted, sold the prototype to the highest bidder, disappeared into a country without extradition, and spent the rest of their life trying to sleep through the paranoia. But that's how amateurs get caught. The real money wasn't in an incomplete prototype. Lyrones was still building the final model. The one they'd register for a full patent. The one they'd pitch to the Department of Energy and the World Economic Forum. The version that would pass every simulation, every stress test. The one that would rewrite the future. I didn't want a glimpse of that. I wanted the whole thing. And for that, I had to stay. By the end of my first year, I was promoted. Officially, Lead Infrastructure Coordinator. Unofficially, one step closer to the heart of the company. They moved me into the new building, downtown Austin, glass walls, security fobs, facial recognition elevators. I spent most of my time in the server rooms, installing network upgrades I didn't need, creating redundant protocols just so I could learn the architecture better than anyone else. And all the while, Ampera kept evolving. I watched it grow from code snippets into a living framework. I watched engineers get hired and fired. I watched senior management tighten access controls. I even watched them try to break their own system, and fail. Because Priya? She was a genius. And geniuses, when they feel safe, leave doors open. By year 2, I wasn't just a guy fixing things. I was someone they trusted. I got invited to off-site retreats, poker nights. I joined the company's soccer league. I became the quiet but reliable guy, the one everyone liked but never looked at too closely. That's when I started preparing the exit. By the beginning of year 2, I was no longer just another employee. I had a seat in meetings where strategy was discussed. I had admin-level access to half the company's internal systems. And more importantly, I had credibility. People started asking me for advice. Not just on IT, but on business decisions, hiring, project deadlines. That's how trust works in these places. Once they see you as part of the solution, they stop questioning your access. That's when I started constructing my escape plan. Because once I stole the final version of Project Ampera, I wouldn't get another chance. No second tries. No rewrites. This had to be clean, perfect, and silent. The first thing I did was build out 2 new identities. One as a venture capitalist operating out of London, under the name David Rowan. The other, a corporate security consultant, a cover I could use in case things got loud. Both identities were supported by shell companies I'd established years before. They had bank records, client histories, invoices, fake emails, phone numbers. All of it. You can't walk away with something like Ampera unless you already have a new life waiting. Then I started looking for the weak point in their patent storage system. See, Lyrones didn't use typical cloud patent registration. They were too paranoid for that. Instead, they stored the sealed version of the Ampera algorithm in an air-gapped offline server, protected by biometric access and multiple layers of physical security. It was kept in a secured archive inside their original facility, now used mostly for cold storage and legal redundancies. The location, Vault D. It wasn't just locked behind keycards and pins. Vault D used 2 layers of biometric control, retina scan and fingerprint. One was assigned to the CTO. The other, to a man named Elliot Strauss, their outside legal counsel and longtime fixer. Elliot was old school. No social media. No digital footprint. He worked from Boston, flew into Austin quarterly. I knew that if I wanted to steal the patent, I didn't just need access to the building. I needed his biometric signature. So I set up a meeting. But not as me. Using my London identity, I reached out to Lyrones under the guise of a private investor representing a green tech hedge fund. I offered interest in acquiring future licensing rights to Ampera in international markets. I kept the language vague, the credentials impressive, the money big. It worked. Elliot flew to San Francisco to meet David Rowan in person. And David? He looked like me, but sharper. Cleaner suit. Subtle British accent I had been practicing for months. We met in a hotel lounge overlooking the Embarcadero. I ordered top-shelf whiskey. Elliot went with a dry martini, no olives. He was cautious, but not immune to ego. After 30 minutes of conversation, he started talking about the project. This algorithm, it's more than just code. It's the culmination of a decade of work. We don't store it online. Ever. The final copy sits air-gapped in a sealed node inside our archive facility. Vault D, biometric-only access. They'd have to cut my hand off to get to it. I smiled politely. He didn't realize he just told me everything I needed. He left his glass behind after the meeting, half full. I paid for the drinks, took his martini glass with me in a napkin. That was all I needed. Back in my safe house, I ran the prints. It took hours, but I got a clean lift from the glass stem. I used a custom polymer mold printer, imported unregistered, to fabricate a synthetic fingerprint membrane. I only had one shot with it. These things degrade fast. Moisture, pressure, timing, all had to be perfect. I also cloned the keycard I had been issued during a routine server upgrade inside the original facility 2 months prior. I'd made sure to, accidentally, help with the cable reroute in Vault D during the visit. Enough time to understand the door panel. Enough time to catch a glance of the backup failsafes. Now, I had the access. The print. The plan. All I needed was the right night. That came 2 weeks later, during a scheduled infrastructure update that I'd personally authorized. The system would be offline for 6 hours. I arrived at 2:47 a.m. wearing a maintenance uniform, ID badge, hard hat. Nobody questioned a guy walking around with a tablet and a utility belt at that hour. I made my way down to the archive floor, past the cold storage stacks, until I reached Vault D. It was silent. The kind of silence that rings in your ears. I keyed the card. No alert. I slid the synthetic fingerprint membrane over my index finger, pressed it to the pad. It worked. The vault hissed as it unlocked. Inside was a climate-controlled room the size of a walk-in closet. There was only one object inside, a reinforced, fireproof aluminum briefcase locked inside a transparent polymer safe. I used my cloned override code to disengage the internal seal. No alarms. No blinking lights. Just a quiet click. I took the briefcase, slipped it into my maintenance bag, zipped it up, and walked out. No one stopped me. No one even looked. That's how you know you've done it right. I didn't go home after the heist. That's rule number 1. Instead, I boarded a private charter under my backup identity and flew straight to Vancouver, landing just before sunrise. The briefcase never left my side. I checked into a safe house apartment I'd prepped months earlier. Concrete walls, blackout curtains, no Wi-Fi, no windows visible from the street. The kind of place that felt temporary even before you stepped inside. I waited 2 hours. I didn't sleep. I didn't even sit down. Then I opened the case. Inside was a sealed titanium flash drive, hand-etched on its surface. Ampera Final, Lyrones Trust, do not connect to network. I knew better than to disobey the warning. I booted up a fresh laptop, burner system, air-gapped, never connected to the internet, never used before. I disabled every background service, ran it off battery, plugged the drive in. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the contents appeared. Folders, logs, simulation reports, documentation. The core algorithm, encrypted, polished, real. I wasn't expecting it to hit me emotionally, but it did. 3 years of work. A fake life. Dozens of fake identities. Years of pretending to be someone else. All of it for this. I'd just stolen a digital weapon more powerful than anything you could fit in a vault. I should have felt invincible. But then, the screen flickered. Just once. Then a message appeared. Plain white font on a black screen. If you're reading this, you've been watched for a long time. The laptop locked up. The fan spun wildly. I yanked the drive out. Too late. The entire system fried, screen cracked with a hiss, battery sparked, and smoke filled the room. I grabbed a fire blanket, suffocated the sparks, and smashed the laptop with a wrench until it was nothing but glass and fragments. It didn't make sense. I'd tested everything. I'd controlled every variable. So how the hell did they know? I paced the room, mind racing. There were only a handful of possibilities. The drive was embedded with a self-destruct kill switch. My laptop was somehow compromised. Or, and this was the most terrifying option, they had let me take it. That thought stuck with me. What if the entire thing had been orchestrated? What if I was never a step ahead? What if they knew, from the beginning, exactly who I was, and still let me walk out the door? That would mean someone was waiting for me to open the box. Waiting for me to lead them to, what? A buyer? A network? Someone higher than me? But I wasn't working for anyone else. This was my job. My score. Mine. Or so I thought. The next morning, an envelope appeared under my door. No sound. No knock. Just the envelope, resting on the concrete like it had materialized from thin air. Inside was a single Polaroid photo. It was me. In Vault D. Taken from an angle no camera should have been able to capture. The timestamp was burned into the corner. The exact moment I removed the briefcase. On the back, written in sharp black ink. We let you take it. Now you owe us. That was it. No instructions. No threats. No name. Just the truth. I hadn't beaten the system. I'd walked into a cage, built exactly for me. I destroyed the photo. Burned the remnants. Flushed the ashes. Then I moved again, this time to Buenos Aires, under my third backup identity. No digital trail. No familiar contacts. Just cash and silence. I didn't touch a screen for 6 days. When I finally did, I found another message, waiting in the inbox of an account I hadn't accessed in 4 years. Job complete. Instructions to follow. Do not run again. There was no sender. But it didn't matter. Because someone had taken control of my life, quietly, surgically, just like I used to do to others. I thought I was in control. That's the great illusion with jobs like this. You plan every detail, you rehearse every outcome, and you convince yourself that your biggest risk is failure. It's not. The real danger isn't failure. It's success, and what comes after. 3 weeks after the heist, I was living like a ghost in Buenos Aires. Cheap apartment. Curtains closed. Cash-only transactions. I didn't speak unless I had to. I had no digital devices, just a prepaid analog burner I hadn't turned on since I landed. Then one morning, someone slid a second envelope under my door. This time, it wasn't a photo. It was a name, a location, and a date. Arrive alone. Don't bring anything. Don't be late. The name was Elliot Strauss, the attorney, the man whose fingerprint I'd cloned to enter Vault D. The location, a private airstrip outside Berlin. The date, 4 days from now. I sat with it for hours. Why him? He wasn't just a liability, I'd framed him. His biometric data had been used without consent. If anyone had a reason to turn me in, it was Elliot. But the message didn't sound like a threat. It sounded like an invitation. I arrived in Berlin under my Rowan identity. Ironic, considering it had been the alias I used to manipulate Elliot in the first place. The airstrip was small. No security. Just one hangar with a tinted black sedan parked out front. I approached. The back door opened. Elliot was sitting inside. Same press suit. Same cold stare. He didn't look surprised to see me. He didn't look afraid either. He just said, "Get in." I did. The driver pulled away. No one spoke for several minutes. Then Elliot reached into a small leather briefcase and pulled out a silver USB. He held it up, almost like a trophy. "This," he said, "is the real Ampera file. Not the decoy you triggered." My stomach dropped. He continued, "You were never meant to take the original. That one was planted. The code on it, useless. Just enough real math to fool a skilled thief. Just enough malware to ruin his laptop." He smiled. I didn't. "The real file," he said, "was never stored in Vault D. It was never in Lyrones at all. Because Lyrones isn't a tech company. Not really. It's a net. A net designed to catch predators who think they're smarter than the system." He handed me the USB. I didn't take it. He didn't seem to care. "You've been marked," he said. "Your name, whatever version you're using, is in a ledger now. A private one. You can't erase it. You can't hack it. You can't outrun it." I finally found my voice. "So what do you want from me?" He turned to face me fully. "You're going to work for us." That was the new beginning. No more aliases. No more heists. They didn't need me to steal anymore. They needed me to find others like me. Identify the manipulators, the infiltrators, the quiet ones lurking inside major systems. I became the bait. The proof that the net worked. I was used in debriefings. In meetings. Sometimes as a cautionary tale, sometimes as a recruiter. They called it a preventative intelligence initiative. I called it the longest con of all, one I couldn't walk away from. Now, I live in a city I never name. My passport changes, but not because I make it so. My paycheck arrives, but from no company I can trace. And every few months I receive a list. Names, places, targets, people like me. People who think they're about to pull off the job of their lives. And every time I see one of them walk through the front door of a company, wearing a fake smile and a new name, I think, God help you. You have no idea who's already watching. Because in this world, you don't steal the future. The future steals you.